Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The mayor has called the meeting to order. Mayor Davey.
Here.
Councilmember Kaplan.
Here.
Councilmember Laredo.
Here.
Vice Mayor London. Vice Mayor London.
What do you expect?
Unmuted. Here.
Councilmember McCormick is not with us this evening. Councilmember Moss.
Here.
Councilmember Segurola.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, we do have a quorum. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item, Mr. Mayor, is brief comments by council.
Right. Well, I want to welcome you all. First thing I would like to do is I would like to acknowledge the accomplishments of our police department. I don't know if folks know, but this week, the Key Biscayne Police Department was notified that they have been re-accredited by the Commission for Florida Law Enforcement Accreditation, placing the department in the top 10% of the police departments in the state of Florida. The Key Biscayne Police Department was recognized with Excelsior status. Now, Excelsior status, and the manager certainly can speak to this, and Anna Guerra, who's our accreditation manager, can certainly speak to it, how much work they've put into it. But the Excelsior status is the highest recognition that the accreditation agency bestows upon police departments. There are currently 229 accredited agencies in the state of Florida, and 174 of those are law enforcement agencies. Now, in order to get Excelsior recognition, you must demonstrate a level of commitment to the Florida accreditation process that is unparalleled in the criminal justice profession. Now, just to let you understand that the KBPD's been accredited since 2005. They have achieved perfect scores, which have been rated flawless every 3 years. And the way to get the Excelsior status, you need to get 5 perfect scores. So that's 15 years of performance at that level. So I want to commend, I know I got to listen in on the accreditation presentation. I want to commend Anna Guerra for all of her hard work. I want to commend Chief Press and his folks for all of their hard work. And I just wanted the people of Key Biscayne to know that we have one of the finest, not that you didn't already know out there, but we have one of the finest police departments in the state of Florida. And congratulations to all of them. So I hope I hope the manager maybe he'll be able to speak to it a little bit later on. He will. I stole some of his thunder, so I'm sorry about that. But I wanted to make sure that people understood. Secondly, I think you all know President Biden put out a proclamation requesting that we lower our flags to half-mast for 5 days in honor of the 500,000 Americans who have died from COVID over the past year. I think it's important for us as a community to remember that we're not through this yet. We are seeing decreases in the rates of hospitalization, but we're not through this. There are variants coming out. We don't know what's going to happen. People are talking about another surge coming in a month or so. So we have to be diligent. We have to maintain. We have to wear the masks, social distance, wash our hands thoroughly and often, and keep at it. I want to commend the Community Foundation for their efforts to help get our seniors vaccinated. I have a resolution that I sent around today in order for us to sort of move the governor to include police officers and teachers as essential personnel. And we need more doses in Miami-Dade County. Right now, we have 13% of the state's population. We had 22% of the COVID cases in the state, and we've only received 8% of the vaccines doses. So that's got to increase. And so I do have the resolution that's been sent around. I apologize for the late time that it was sent around. I'd only received it when I sent it. But we've got to do better for the county, which will do better for Key Biscayne. That's my long, brief comments. Anybody else?
Just my note on echoing what you said about the foundation. Did such a wonderful job in shepherding seniors to their COVID vaccination appointments. They really worked the problem and they delivered results. Did a great job.
Agreed. Anybody else?
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I echo your comments and also wanted to congratulate our police department, and through them, and perhaps I'm going to propose a resolution, the City of Miami Police Department and the Miami-Dade Police Department. After many efforts, I know the chief has been reaching out. If you were in and out of the key on Saturday, there was a massive presence on the Rickenbacker Raceway as we begin to bring that under control. I got more calls that night, including family members who came in for a dinner, and it made my day and my month that there is actually, there was a massive presence. In fact, there was 3 others today as I went out in the afternoon. So we're making great progress in trying to enforce the speed limits in that area. And perhaps later, if it's not appropriate or not, I motion for you to write a letter to the mayors of those 2 municipalities, the county and the mayor, thanking them and their police department because I know it's always been a stress for them, because as we work through this, they have so many other responsibilities. But this kind of unadvertised show of force will have a great power of spreading the news by word of mouth, and people will start respecting the speed limits and our entry to our jurisdiction. So congratulations to our chief, our police department, and the Miami-Dade police forces. And I'd like to make that a resolution, so you have the authority to write a letter or send a resolution on our behalf.
Why don't we have that as a discussion item?
Okay.
Next, anybody else have brief comments? All right, moving on.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is public comments.
Okay, Pete, do we have anybody signed up? And could you please read the standard lawyer language?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, listening or watching from home via channel 77 on Comcast, channel 99 on AT&T, or streaming us live through our website. If you wish to speak to the council regarding any matter, please dial the phone number 305-365-7569. Then proceed to enter the meeting ID of 231-627-8415. For those of you that are currently in the meeting and wish to speak, either raise your hand through the Zoom application or dial *6 now to raise your hand. *9 to raise your hand. Mr. Mayor, I do have one person signed up to speak. It is a telephone number ending in 574.
Caller, I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Pete.
Participant, unmute yourself, please dial *6.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. If you could state your name
Great.
for the record and be clear if you're a hired consultant or village employee and or engaged in lobbying activities and or representing an organization for the record.
Hi, my name is Jan Dillo. I'm just a resident.
Okay. Hey, Jen.
Good afternoon. Hi. Good afternoon, Mayor Davey and council members. I'd like to speak tonight about.
I need you to state your name. Sorry, yeah, state your address.
Oh,
for the
200
record,
Ocean Lane Drive.
Perfect.
That's okay. 200 Ocean Lane Drive. Okay. So good afternoon, Mayor Davey and council members. I'd like to speak tonight about the long-forsaken Calusa Park Playhouse. I think it's time that the village address the potential dangers this building poses, particularly in view of the suspicious fire activity at the beach club. When I was in middle school, my family moved to a new home located on land that had formerly been part of George Washington's farm. In the community, there were the remnants of his old hay barn. It had survived for 200 years, that is until a couple of my middle school peers burned it down. Luckily, no one was hurt, and because the barn was in the middle of an empty field, there was no other property damage. But if a fire were to occur at the Calusa, what is now a shack, due to childhood mischief, teens smoking pot, a homeless person starting a cook fire, arson, or an electric spark, I think the outcome could be worse. I urge each of you to take a walk in Calusa to take a look at this building. The fencing is falling down. Anyone looking for a secluded place could easily get in, and they have, judging from the graffiti and abandoned shoe you can see from the road. I don't even remember seeing a no trespassing sign. The entire building is overgrown, which obviously increases the fire risk during dry and windy seasons. I have no special knowledge of fire transmission, but what seems most worrisome to me is that the shack is maybe 50 or 75 feet from an unfortified electric substation that I assume powers a good portion of the key. And beyond that, about 500 feet are some KV businesses. I would hate to think of what could happen if a fire started at night when no one was around. At a minimum, I think the responsible thing to do is to ask the fire department, and I'm not sure if that's the village or the city of Miami, to review the situation and to get recommendations. In the meantime, and I think this should happen quickly, the fencing should be repaired immediately. No trespassing signs should be posted. And if it's not already on the police department's nightly rounds, it should be added to it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jan.
Mr. Mayor, I have no one else at this time.
Okay, we do have, let's not forget, we have another public comments time toward the end, right before our reports and recommendations. So if anybody joins in and they want to speak later, they will have the opportunity. Oh, we do have one more person who just put their hand up.
Yes, sir. It is caller with the phone number ending in 752. Caller, please dial *6 now to unmute yourself. Caller, you're live.
Hello. Hi. All right. Hi, this is Pat Woodson, 1725 Tiger Tail Avenue, calling as chair of the Parks and Open Space Board. I'd like to say a few words just about updating the way we think about parks, since we have a discussion item this evening about some green space potential. So we know that parks have a direct impact on our quality of life and experience, and the experience of our community, as well as our property values, and now more than ever, our ability to manage sea level rise through flood mitigation. Permeable green spaces are ideal locations, as we know, for underground pump stations and a whole variety of nature-based solutions. So our challenge now is, and our opportunity, is to think about parks not only as necessary to meet this existential threat of ours, but to really embrace innovative nature-based designs for resilient recreation spaces that serve all ages. So as a 30-year resident of the Key and ongoing chair of the Land Acquisition Committee, which became the Parks and Open Space Board, I could say, as many of you know, that we've collectively recommended purchase of the entry block space multiple times over many years. Meanwhile, we've focused on recommending properties that contribute to a network of green spaces, which we've been able to achieve to a good degree within 10 minutes of each other, to support walking, biking, et cetera, rather than driving in our community. Traffic being one of our major challenges as well. So thanks to the fact that village councils have acted to create new parks, I think we're now really seeing this shift. So we're actually appreciating, especially during the pandemic, we've seen green spaces are supporting our property values, our health, neighborly connection, our air quality, reducing the number of cars. And we're especially grateful, me personally, and I know the whole board, that another opportunity for green space is up for discussion this evening. And as always, we are a small, devoted group of citizens ready to engage in full support.
Thank you very much.
So thank you.
Anybody
Mr. Mayor,
else?
I have no one else signed up.
Okay. Next item.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is the agenda: approvals, deferrals, additions, deletions, substitutions, and withdrawals.
Okay, I have two. I have an addition. I would like us to, I'd like to discuss briefly, and I understand most of you probably didn't have the opportunity to look at the resolution that Miami Beach has created. I sent around for all of you, but I'd like to talk just briefly about it. And then I think I'm going to have to remove B11, B5 appointments, because that was really supposed to be the chair coming in and speaking to us about this. So there's a little confusion on our part, and I apologize for that. So I'm going to put that to the next meeting. And if any of you, again, I'll have Luis de la Cruz come in and give us an update. And then, if you all want to send me names, happy to accept them. And then we could make I'll make my recommendations, and hopefully we'll have some appointments at the next meeting. But so I'm removing 5 and I'm putting in 11B6, which should be my resolution, discussion on the resolution of Miami Beach.
Why don't we include in that discussion Luis's notion of sending a letter to the county and the city, as long as we're at it?
Oh, yeah. Well, I wanted Luis to be able to do that, but yeah, Luis, are you okay with that? Councilmember Laredo?
Yeah, what was the last part that I can't hear?
We're gonna discuss your idea of sending letters of appreciation to work with the city of Miami and Miami-Dade County.
Yes, that would be great.
All right, let's make that 7. Letters.
What's
And
number
on
6?
this item withdrawal, just a clarification, did we get that? Is that going to be also the request that we have of Councilman Moss to find out if, or is Luis going to report about having all the committees be consistent on 7 members, and there was some review of the participation? You want to defer that too?
Let's defer. Yeah, I think
okay.
Well, yeah, let's defer that until next meeting. But let's come back ready to talk about it. Okay.
I'm a little confused. What was number 5?
5, I took out 5. That's appointments to the.
Okay, and then you went to 6, which is the
6
Miami
is
Beach.
and 6 is Miami Beach. 7 is letters to Miami-Dade County.
Thank you.
Anybody else have items to add? Councilmember, Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I'd like to remove or defer second reading on 8B1, ordinance for revising the budget. More time should be spent on analyzing all those costs.
Okay.
8 what? 8B1?
8B1.
Yes.
I don't understand. Why?
I said, what I said was, Luis, that I believe more time is required to analyze all those costs in that particular resolution or the ordinance in the next meeting, if possible. I appreciate that.
Can I ask the manager if that's going to delay anything on their side? Or can wait?
Is that?
Sorry.
Say again, Manager.
Could you please repeat the question?
Yeah, so Councilmember London is asking to defer item 8B1, which is the amendment. And I just want to make sure, is that going to have any effect on your guys operating?
Yes, sir.
For the next meeting.
Are you able to wait until one meeting? Would that still have an issue or no?
If we have to wait, we'll wait. But it will delay some of the projects we were prepared to start actually tomorrow, such as your Crandon Boulevard landscape repairs to do with that, and some of the other things that we were going to bring to council on the 9th. So,
Councilmember London, I would maybe recommend that maybe we keep it on just to find out what those are, and then we can maybe make a motion to defer. Is that okay?
Do anything you like.
Okay.
Or we'll have to take a vote in a moment on the additions and deletions.
That's right.
How about if we separate this particular deletion, Ed's point, and we'll vote on that separately. Now.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand, Frank.
We're going to vote on additions, deletions. We're going to vote on 8B1 being deferred to a date certain. We're going to vote on that right now. Is there a motion to do so?
Ed moved it.
A second.
Okay. Discussion. Is there, Ed's made his point that he wants more time.
I've gone through all the items, and I don't know if all the council has gone through all the items, thoroughly, because there's a lot of money involved. And most of the things, but I really think that some more study has to be done. So that's all.
Okay.
I feel that we had a very full discussion on this. The memo seemed ample in describing what was being done and why. I went through it, line by line. I saw what was going from where to what and for what purpose. I'm ready to go.
Councilmember Moss.
My understanding is that this money is money that's being carried over. But my question is that if we could approve this tonight and then we can still review this and we find something that we may want to move to another location, we can always bring that up as a motion and make that adjustment. Is that correct?
Yes. So if you were to approve it tonight, that doesn't mean you're going to approve or reapprove the projects that are already in there. We could go over them, bring them back to council on the 9th and have that discussion.
The example that came up last week was, I think Ignacio raised the point about the community center. That project is going to come back multiple times for multiple purposes. We're going to speak to it each and every time.
Yeah,
Councilmember Laredo.
This is a difficult one because I think we owe each other courtesies, but I echo Frank. This is, of course, the budget process. These are amendments thereof. We've had it before us before. This morning, I spoke with the manager with my questions that I had those cleared. I don't understand. In other words, I'm just not into micromanaging. I know it's I respect Ed's, but we can't just stop things because we haven't been able to get around. Maybe you're getting the information late. I don't know because I can't. I know that you're traveling, but I spend a lot of time on this, and I don't see why we can't move it. But I hate to just delay our managing. We got so much going on.
For my 2 cents is a council member has requested this be delayed 2 weeks. I don't think it's going to be a substantial delay. I'm willing to grant him the courtesy. I'm fine with delaying it until the next meeting, so he can ask the information that he requests. I think he always brings a unique point of view to the discussion of budgetary issues, so I'm willing to give him the time if that's what he wants.
Yeah, I guess I'm of a mind that there are some things we need to get going on that we've already approved that we can use this funding for. I understand there are items that will come up. We're budgeting here. We haven't approved all of the items. Ed, are there items that specifically you're concerned with? That
I don't, basically there's a whole, as you say, it's a whole laundry list, and most of them are fine. When I say fine, I haven't delved into them completely. I just received this particular budget, this book. I guess I got it, let's see, today's Monday, so it was in my house on Sunday. So I really haven't had a chance to read through it completely, but I did go through it, and some of the things that saying, I have some questions, that's all. And
I understand that, but if it's going to, I guess my concern is, are we delaying projects we've already approved? That's my question.
Well, we approve a lot of things. We don't really necessarily go through them completely to find out if they're really necessary, what the costs are, etc. So all I'm asking for, if you would grant it to me, if you don't, I understand. Give me 2 weeks to next week so I can meet with the manager, the other people involved, and satisfy myself that we're not wasting a lot of money. That's all.
Mike, if I can offer a suggestion, I would still like to have it on the agenda so we
can
find out.
Well, it will be on the agenda. We're just pulling or not. I mean, if we don't defer it, it'll come back before us in a little while and we can discuss.
That's what I'm saying. So I'm just saying we should just vote on this now. When it comes back, we can talk to the manager, and if we decide to defer it, we will defer it then.
Yeah,
so why don't we withdraw the motion now and then get
can we vote on it?
Yeah, we're going to vote on it right now. Call the question, please, Madam Clerk.
On the motion, all those
to defer.
Could we just withdraw it, Ed, until 5 minutes from now? Ed?
I'm sorry.
I don't want to vote against your wishes, so why don't you withdraw the motion and we'll revisit it in about 5 minutes. If you don't feel satisfied with the numbers,
I don't really care about 5 minutes. What I'd like to do. You're saying revisit it in 5 minutes?
Well, because
that's essentially that's exactly what's going to happen. I mean, if we don't defer it, it's going to be discussed and we'll have this full conversation about the item then. And if there are items we can tweak out and you have
again,
concerns about, we can pull it out.
I just would like to do more research before I express my opinion. That's all. And I don't know if all the other members of council have done the research to each one of the items. That's all.
Right.
Maybe they have. One is tardy.
Okay,
Let's go.
so
Chad.
why doesn't the council, why don't you just, you have two options. You could either, if Ed got a second on his deferral, then you have to vote on that. If
Right,
not,
he did. He got
then-
a second.
All right, so technically you should vote on unless he withdraws it.
Correct.
Or if he wants to withdraw it, you can hear it in 5 minutes and set the agenda. So Ed, do you want to be voted on now on the deferral or just wait 5 minutes?
I'd like to do it and I'll be done with it.
Okay.
No, Ed, Ed, come on, Ed, listen. Just defer for 5 minutes for crying out loud because we don't want to vote. I don't want to vote against your wishes. In 5 minutes, just give 5 minutes, Ed. I would like to have a nice feeling about our 6, 7 of us. Can you just defer this for 5 minutes, Ed?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Hello?
Let's just vote on it. We're going to see it in 5 minutes either way. I'm pretty sure.
I hate to have a vote on
Understood.
something that is a courtesy.
Councilmember, I'm sorry, Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Wait, this is in favor
you
of
ju- you
deferring
ju-
it.
This
Yeah,
is,
you,
oh, no,
you,
this is
you
in
just
favor.
voted
Yeah.
aye in favor.
Oh,
of
I'm
deferring.
sorry. I pull in my, no, I apologize. All those, I thought we were going to do a voice vote is what I thought we were going to do. I mean, a roll call, but it's fine. Go ahead. All those in
The
favor of
motion to
deferring?
Defer to a date certain.
Correct.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed?
Nay. Nay.
Okay, should I do a roll call? Because
I think it's probably easier so you know
No.
who's, what's
Okay.
going on. What's that?
I think it was clear. I think it was 2 in favor and 4 that were against, if I
Okay.
saw it.
That's
Okay.
what I heard.
Okay.
Yeah, it was Councilmember Segurola and Councilmember London were for it, and then the other 4 were against it.
Correct.
I believe. Okay, can we, and then now just a motion to set the agenda?
Moved.
I move.
Second.
All those in favor?
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, next item.
Mr. Mayor, is the consent agenda.
I move it.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance on second reading of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, amending ordinance number 2020-04, which adopted the budget for fiscal year 2020-2021 by revising the 2020-2021 fiscal year budget, providing for implementation and providing for an effective date.
Move.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Manager, if you want to
Mayor,
talk about this.
members, absolutely. It was my recommendation the first time, and it is tonight, that we approve this on second reading. The recommendation for approval is simply about the budget amendment that we accept the monies that were carried forward, and our budget process becomes complete. Now, bringing projects back to you all, either one at a time or in bulk, is something that we could do at different council meetings. This was not intended to just go ahead and give a check mark on every one of these projects here. I think there are projects that are questionable. I know I have issues with a few of them myself that I would not recommend we move forward on, but I would recommend that we at least approve, we have the money in the bank, and then we start having our discussions. But that will at least allow me tomorrow to start working on Crandon Boulevard. The team is ready to go. We've done all our due diligence, and that would be one project I think everybody here could agree on. And then we could have our discussions during the week. I would love to sit down with Vice Mayor London, and have that discussion, and same discussion with all the other council members.
If you're going to bring it back, I have no objection.
Yeah, all the items will come back.
I voted against.
Hold on, guys. Hold on. But Vice Mayor, before you speak, let me open this up for public comments. I have to do my public comments. Otherwise, Chad and Jocelyn yell at me later. Do we have anybody signed up, Pete?
Mr. Mayor, I have no one signed up to speak.
Okay.
Go through the
Yeah,
directions.
Pete, go through the directions, please.
Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen watching at home on channel 77, on Comcast, channel 99 on AT&T, or streaming live through our website. If you wish to speak on this ordinance, please dial the phone number 305-365-7569. Then please enter the meeting ID of 231-627-8415. For those of you logged in now and wish to speak to this ordinance, please either dial *9 on your telephones or raise your hand in the Zoom app.
I don't think we have anybody. I'm going to close public comments, subject to the caveat that if somebody is a little slow but they want to speak, I'm going to allow it during our conversation here on the dais, in the virtual dais. Vice Mayor, apologies. Go ahead.
Well, I have no objection, since we're going to bring these things back on an individual basis, one at a time. And if I voted against the Crandon Boulevard, should we say revitalization, I couldn't go home. So therefore, obviously,
I thought so, Ed.
All right.
Yeah, I think Chuck did it on purpose.
I think for purposes, Chuck, just to clarify, if you could, I think, that one was approved, correct, at the last meeting?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the remainder of the ones is what you were referring to.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I think that's exactly what we talked about last week. I mean, the bike lanes was the green lanes was an example of coming back with later
there's
data.
a bunch of stuff. All of this stuff's coming back. We just are putting the money.
I called the question, Michael.
Okay. Anybody else want to speak to it?
I do.
Councilmember Segarola?
Just want to say for the record, I'm happy that we're bringing each one of these things back at a future date, but I'll repeat what I said at the last meeting. I have a problem with 3 specific items. First is the $165,000 for the urban planner. Second is the $587,000 for the bike lanes. And third is the $1 million for the design of the community center. Those are things that I would much prefer to not even set the money aside, because like that, I know we would not spend it, but my objection is
Objection.
just for the record.
It's noted. Anybody else want to speak, or let's call the question? Roll call.
Vice Mayor London,
Yes.
Councilmember Moss,
Yes.
Councilmember Segarola,
Yes.
Mayor Davey,
Yes.
Councilmember Kaplan,
Yes.
Councilmember Laredo.
Yes.
Motion carries. The next item, Mr. Mayor, is a capital project authorizing ordinance of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, selecting for area construction Southern Division Company, Inc. for the village's beach renourishment maintenance project in an amount not to exceed $1,836,564, providing for authorization.
Moved.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Manager.
As I did so 2 weeks ago, my recommendation is that we approve this and we move forward with this project. I know that Council Member Kaplan did have a discussion on expanding the project. However, as is, I suggest we do it. We have a time limitation right now. We need to get those shovels in the ground come March 1st. We've got to deal with turtles. We've got to deal with season starting on May 1st. So time is of the essence. So I support this. Want to move forward.
Call the question.
Well, I have to open for public comments. Nice try, Vice Mayor. Let's call public comments. Pete, anybody signed up?
No one signed up for this ordinance, sir.
Okay, read the instructions again one more time, please. I know it's a
Yes, sir.
pain, but I want to give people time if they want to speak to this.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you wish to speak to council on this ordinance, please dial 305-365-7569. And please enter meeting ID 231-627-8415. For those of you that are currently logged into our meeting and do wish to speak, please raise your hand in the Zoom application, or if you're connected by telephone, please dial *9.
Okay, again, I'm going to close public comments. Let's call the question.
Just one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My thoughts about expanding were not intended to slow this down at all.
Right.
This was a discussion about a later decision. If the process of putting down 8,000 additional yards made a material difference to the resulting beach bed at a cost that was, dollar sound, then we could and should do it under the existing permit. It's hard to do these projects, and we have the end of the life of this permit.
Understood.
We think that things are going to get better and easier, but until they do, we're not sure.
That's right. Okay. Roland, you wanted to say something real quick?
It will make a difference. From a shoreline protection point of view, it's always good to have more on the beach than less on the beach. It'll probably be about 6 feet more berm width on the beach. But it should be noted that only 23,000 cubic yards are being reimbursed by the state. So the additional 8,000 cubic yards would have to be coming basically out of the village's pocket. And that's approximately $414,000. So I just want that to be clear so that everyone understands that if we do move forward with an extra 8,000 cubic yards, that it will not be covered by the grant dollars that were obtained to pay for 23,000 cubic yards.
So as a procedural point, we don't need to deal with the 8,000 yards to move this forward. We do need to adopt this ordinance to move that project forward. We can come back and discuss this and decide whether it's a good idea, good use of money or not. So I think this would be a change order and manageable, but it's additional truckloads and additional scope.
Mike, we cannot hear you on the record.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. I just want to be clear. Roland, can we do a change order subsequently to this? I mean, subsequent to approving this, will we be able, on March 9th, when we get back together, are we going to be able to do a change order on this?
I'd have to check with the contractor. I'm going to be speaking with them tomorrow. I think that we would be able to, but again, to be certain, I would really have to speak to the contractor.
Well, okay, because I mean, that was something we discussed 2 weeks ago. I think, we're obviously, I think we're all in favor of this. So let's move this along, but bring this back. I think this is, if as you say, an additional 6 feet is beneficial and we can do this under the existing permit, why wouldn't we do this at this time? Because
Mr. Mayor, I could even try and call the contractor right now. I have his cell phone, if that would be helpful.
I mean, I don't know. No, we've got to get numbers. I think it's got to come back. We've got to really review this. This is we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars that we're committing on behalf of the village.
What I would ask is if we can then amend the ordinance to be clear that a change order that would exceed the manager's purchasing authority can be accomplished by resolution of capital authorizing resolution of the council, basically.
Should we do that in this ordinance?
I'll move that.
Yeah.
I'll second it.
Okay. So the amendment to the ordinance is on the table, whereby we would be allowed to change to do a change order simply with a capital resolution. Is that right, Chad?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Let's call
if it exceeds the manager's purchasing authority.
If it exceeds the 30. Vice Mayor?
Roland.
Yeah.
This extra sand, you said it would increase the berm, I think. How
Yes.
much longer or how much better would this secure our beach going forward? A month, 2 months, a year, 5 years? What would we get for $114,000?
Yeah.
Well, we're not doing it. That's okay.
What would we get?
You'd be getting.
I'm asking him, if we did this, what would we get for our money? That's all.
You'd be getting about an extra 6 feet of width of that berm. And how long that's going to last, that would ultimately depend on the types of storms that the beach is subject to. I mean, the truth of the matter is, Councilmember London, we could put all this sand on the beach this month, March, April, and get hit by a Category 5 hurricane this summer, and it takes half the beach away or the entire beach away, and we have to start over again. But the reality is, the more width you have, the more protection you have.
So again, I'll ask you the same question. Obviously, between 1900 and 2000, there were only 3 Category 5 hurricanes in the entire state of Florida. So obviously we can't say we do these things and worry about a Cat 5 because the probability of having a Cat 5 is very low. So I'll ask you again, what, in your opinion, is this really beneficial to the village, and to what extent are we going to benefit by spending $400,000 on extra sand that will not be reimbursed from the state?
But I think, Ed, that's the question. If it comes back before us at the next meeting, I want to really get into this. The questions you're asking would be about the change order. It's not for now. This is just amending to allow us to have that conversation if we so decide.
Let's call
We'll be prepared, Roland, for the next meeting.
Okay.
to have.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Will do.
So this is on the amendment to the ordinance.
No, it's on the ordinance as amended, right?
No, we have to do the amendment first.
That's whatever you guys choose. I mean, you can change your motion as the maker of the motion and just make it as amended, or you can do the amendment first.
All right, I'll change my motion as amended.
That's okay. That's what I thought.
You need a second? You have one.
You have one.
Second, yeah.
All right, let's do a roll call vote.
I'm sorry, can I have a clarification of the wording?
Okay, Chad, you want to speak to the...
Sure. Give me 1 second. We're going to add to section,
Add an amendment to section.
section 2, or no, let's do section 3. And it will say that any change orders to this contract may be approved. Any change orders that exceed the purchasing authority of the manager to this contract may be approved by the village council by a capital authorizing resolution.
Final.
All those in favor?
We got to do a roll call.
Yes, ordinances need roll call.
Councilmember Moss.
Yes.
Councilmember Segurola.
Yes.
Mayor Davey.
Yes.
Councilmember Kaplan.
Yes.
Councilmember Laredo.
Yes.
Vice Mayor London.
Yes.
Motion carries. The ordinance is approved on second reading as amended. The next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance, second reading of an ordinance of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, creating Article 2 of Chapter 8, Environment of the Village Code of Ordinances relating to landscape irrigation, providing for severability, providing for codification, providing for conflicts, and providing for an effective date.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Mr. Manager.
Once again, I'm going to repeat myself and recommend approval of this ordinance. I think it's inherent upon us to do so. I don't think we have much choice in it, although we do have a couple extra options that were afforded to us that could kind of just change, schedules and things of that nature, but it's pretty clear to me. So that is my recommendation that we move it forward.
Can we open this for public comments, please?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, watching at home on channel 77 on Comcast, channel 99 on AT&T, or streaming us live via our website. If you wish to speak to this ordinance, please dial 305-365-7569. Then please enter the meeting ID of 231-627-8415. For those of you that are currently in the meeting and wish to speak to this ordinance, please dial *9 on your telephones, or if you're using the Zoom app, please raise your hand.
Okay, I'm going to close public comments, reserving the right to reopen if somebody pops up. Vice Mayor, you have the floor.
I was contacted, which I'm sure most of you were, from the Condominium Association President's Council objecting to this, and wondered if basically Roland has communicated with them and satisfied them of their fears that this was going to do to the irrigation of the condominiums.
Mr. Mayor, may I address that?
Hold on 1 second. You done, Vice Mayor? Did you want to hear from Roland first?
Yes.
Roland, if I may
Yes.
jump in, I think I can answer his questions.
Sure, Councilmember Cigarella, by all means.
Okay. I was present, well, in the memo that Dr. Samimi prepared, you see a history of everything that's happened with this ordinance. There were 2 meetings with the condo presidents. I was able to attend the first one. I missed the second one, but I've spoken to them about their stance and the changes to the ordinance. And to be honest, I think the condos, the multifamily dwellings, are okay with the ordinance as written. However, there are some issues, some technical issues in the ordinance that they brought up a couple of things. I found a couple more. It's not deal breakers. It's just I think we need to polish up this ordinance a little bit more. And I'll explain if you allow me. Specifically on page 4 of the ordinance, section 8-54, subsection 1, subsection D, with regard to that paragraph about property owners being able to come up with alternative landscaping irrigation schedules. It is the condo's position, and I agree with them, that there should be an additional sentence at the end of that paragraph, which will state something to the effect of the village manager or their designee will not unreasonably refuse or reject that alternative schedule. And those are special legal magic words just to put the onus on everybody involved so that that they can't just dismiss it with a sleight of hand. That's number 1. Number 2, subsection 2A, the 90-day period where new landscaping could be irrigated continuously. My question about that is there a procedure for that to be established? For example, if someone has new landscaping installed, do they have to go somewhere in the village and notify the village so that they can do it? Or do they have to have the receipt in their hand when somebody comes by to cite them for it and then show it at that time? That's a practical question. The next issue is on page 5 of the ordinance, section 6, exceptions. Subsection A states that during restricted times, you can irrigate during restricted times if there is an attendant on site when certain testing is being performed. Problem is, attendant is not one of the defined terms. So what does that mean? Does it mean some sort of professional, or does it mean somebody literally watching the grass get irrigated? Similarly with 6, subsection B2I, watering in is conducted by a professional licensed applicator. Now, the problem with professional licensed applicator and attendant in the previous paragraph, the condos aren't going to have a problem with that because most, if not all of them, have professional landscaping companies that take care of their properties. The issue that I see with these exceptions is this is going to hit the single family homes. Most single family home owners do not have the same level of service on their property. They don't necessarily have a professional licensed applicator or an attendant, whatever that may be. So going back to the history that was highlighted by Dr. Samimi, yes, the condos, the multifamily dwellings, there has been outreach to them. There's been a lot of discussions. There's millions of dollars involved. And they don't have per se any, aside from these few technical issues, any major objection to this ordinance. But I'm worried that the level of outreach has not been the same to the single family homes. To my knowledge, really all there's been is a couple of notices in the Allender mentioning this ordinance, but I see a potential problem when people start getting fined sometime in the future. Now, and that goes to the last one, the last issue, which is on page 6 of the ordinance, section 8-562, saying that the official enforcement period begins August 6th. That is 5 months away practically. Now, given what I believe to be a lack of outreach to the single family homeowners, is that 5 month period enough? Are we going to have a problem where people start, having major issues with this come August 1st in the single family homes and fines start getting handed out? So that's my speech.
Mr. Mayor?
Sorry, Councilmember Laredo and then Councilmember Moss.
Oh, I'm sorry. I know that I'm glad that Councilmember Moss put 2 items today on efficiency and time and all of that, because in a way I'm going to start. I am not understanding, and given Ed's other, how he got his numbers, etc. But I don't understand how we can have a first reading, have 2 outreaches, and still being asked to vote. And on the 11th, by the way, I support what Segurola says, and I support what the condominiums are suggesting to be amended, even though they're, fine tuning. But how does it get to us before it gets fine tuned? I don't, it's not efficient. And maybe I'm missing something. Am I? You know what I mean? I just don't, why does it have to be today if in fact there are some inputs that were received that would change some of the words? Why can't we?
I don't know if this input was received.
Actually, let me speak to that, because it wasn't received, and I have actually reached out well in advance of this coming to second reading to try and get people's input on this final language, and never received any of these comments until now. And I mean, I can speak to a number of them right off the bat, but I don't understand really what the process is. So I might just defer to Chad on, how you deal with these comments on some of these technical items. I mean, quite frankly, I can go through them one by one. I don't remember every single one of them off the top of my head, but if this is the venue to do that, then I'm happy to do that.
Well, yeah. I think, unfortunately, and this is on us as council members, to talk to the clerk, to the manager, and we need to get this stuff too, because I agree that I think this is a tough time to Councilmember Laredo's point for all of the rest of us to be kind of digesting your because I agree with Councilmember Laredo. I think some of your points they're absolutely valid, but I would have preferred that I had them 2 days ago, or at least Dr. Samimi and the manager had them, so we could get them incorporated and not spend time right now incorporating. Councilmember Moss and then Vice Mayor London.
I spent quite a bit of time working on this over the weekend and late last week, all the way into today. From my research, I'm ready to move forward with this and approve it. I think it's in line with our position, our values on sustainability, resiliency, and responsibility, especially when it comes to the importance of our water quality and for our future generations. I have a few questions I want to ask, but I think that what Councilmember Segurola brought up, I don't think is any issues to me. I'm okay with the amendment if we want to put that in there on unreasonably denied. I think that's okay. A couple of the other issues that Councilmember Segurola brought up, I also had issues with. I think but one thing that we need to understand is that the current code that we're under right now is the same. We're under Miami-Dade County's irrigation ordinance right now, and it can be enforced with penalties currently right now. And what we have in front of us, I actually went to section 32-8.2 of the county ordinance and read theirs next to ours to see what is different. And they're almost identical. The things that I see different is that we're actually allowing more flexibility for our residents, based on adding variances in there for people with hardships, how we're going to calculate the odds and evens based on multifamilies. Something that did come up though, I had the same question about section 6B2, where it says watering in is conducted by professional licensed applicator. As a single family home, I said, I'm going to have to hire someone to do that. That's not what it actually means when you read this closely. And I talked to Chad about this. It's under exceptions. So what it's saying is that if you want to irrigate outside the time that you're allowed to irrigate in order to water in fertilizer, then yes, you need to have a professional licensed applicator. However, if you want to do it at the time that you're allowed to do it, you don't need to have that in, which is also in the Miami-Dade County ordinance that we have right now. I think that, again, number 2A, the 90 days is also in the county ordinance. From my understanding is that we cannot make it less restrictive of what the county is asking. The only other change that I would recommend on top of the one that Council Member Segurola asked for is that the first violation, we have at $250. I think it's a pretty hard hit. I would actually recommend that to match to the county, which is $75 for that first violation. I think people will understand because we don't want to be a community that's out to just hit people with code enforcement. We want to work with our community. I think this is a benefit in everybody's in everybody's interest because it does save you money if you irrigate correctly. There are programs out there which I wasn't even aware of. Researching in this, Miami-Dade County has programs where they'll review your irrigation. They'll actually even give you rebates. They can even for free install smart type systems in there. So everybody's open to this. We need to do our own educating and work as partnerships between the village and the people of Key Biscayne. So with that, I'm ready to go ahead. I would make the motion that we add the amendment that Councilmember Segurola asked for, where I think that was in section
1D.
1D that says that the village will not be unreasonably with reject. Yeah, right. Chad, you can correct that one. And I would also like to make that first violation down to $75. And I think if we had that amendment, I would be ready to pass it.
Second the amendment.
After.
That's in order.
I'm sorry, I'm muted. Vice Mayor, and then Councilmember Segurola.
And after you got done speaking and addressing Ignacio suggestions, changes, additions, etc., are there any of them that you don't want us to consider?
Dr. Samimi?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that was
I talked to Ed London about Segurola here.
Is there anything that Councilmember Segurola has asked for that you would be opposed to?
We just need to be careful about exactly how the amendment on section 8541D is worded, because we don't want to be in conflict with the water management district or the county ordinance.
But assuming we worded it properly, no problem.
Yes.
I have a thought on the wording on that I'll share.
I was just going to suggest if
Go ahead, Chad.
if it was acceptable to Councilmember Segurola just to add in the last line before reject, unreasonably reject. I think it would be, Roland is correct. We actually had to meet with the Water Managers District lawyers about this provision. They agreed to this provision as written. I don't think that they'll object by adding that, one word. But this is unique, by the way, to Key Biscayne. This was something that we did to assist our unique circumstances with the condos, and they accommodated it. But if Councilmember Segurola would accept that, I think that would make it simple.
I'm thinking.
Yeah, unreasonably or unreasonably reject. It's basically what you're trying to say.
Yeah, my concern is accept with conditions.
Or reject, or unreasonably accept, unreasonably reject.
Right, but it's going to affect unreasonable.
You could say accept with unreasonable conditions, or reject with, or unreasonably reject, or something. We could come up with language like that.
Yeah, that's my concern. If I may add one more thing, actually, I listened to Councilmember Moss reminded me of. I believe going back to the county ordinance, there's mention of grant.
Yeah, there are.
And there's no mention in our ordinance of that, or any village assistance or process for obtaining those county grants. Should we add that in there too?
The county ordinance applies in the village. There's no harm in us working to assist
right, but
trying to obtain grants.
But if we're gonna shadow the county ordinance, is there going to be a village procedure so that property owners can apply for these grants? Will it be through the village or completely outside? If it's through the village, will the village provide any sort of assistance? I don't have objections to the ordinance. I'm just asking for clarifications on certain things that seem to be glossed over. Dr. Samimi?
Yeah, regarding
okay, go ahead, Roland.
applying for grants, people would apply directly to the Miami-Dade Water and Sewer Department. They wouldn't be applying to the village for grants, or they would apply to the South Florida Water Management District for cost sharing program.
Okay. Would we be able to include that language in the ordinance just so people know for clarity? Because if you read the ordinance, someone who doesn't know about this will have no idea that there are grants through the county or the South Florida Water Management District.
It actually may be better to put that on the website. I think more people will see the website or a Village Connect than actually in the code. But, you know, to advertise that you can obtain grants through the Water and Sewer Department. I mean, remember, this is law, this is the code. So
I understand. Does the county code mention grants?
I know Councilmember Moss just said that. I don't see it in 8.2, 32-8.2 when I'm scanning it right now. But I know that there are those opportunities available because, I mean, I've used it for other types of things when I've bought, you know, a new toilet or a new faucet or something like that.
I just want to add that I did not read that in the ordinance.
Yeah.
When I looked up the ordinance, a webpage popped up about all the grants that you can get.
So I don't think it's in. I mean, Heidi, you may want to chime in. My partner Heidi's here, but I don't think that it's in there.
Thanks, Chad. Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council, Mr. Manager, Madam Clerk. The county ordinance does not provide for the grants. I think what the Vice Mayor was saying is correct. He was mentioning it in the context of it coming up on a web page. And I would echo what Chad was saying. It sounds like it's really, that's not a regulatory thing. So I think it would better serve the village either in the Village Connect, the web page, the continuing education outreach efforts that the village is intending to do. There's other ways to address it than putting it into a regulation.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We will ensure that we conduct a very appropriate campaign, an educational campaign, and I will work through all those outlets. Heidi is correct. We could do multiple, announcements on what they can do, what they can't do, and we'll make sure that that gets to as many people as possible in the village.
Would you like me to restate the motion?
Please.
It's a one round. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in 854.1D unreasonably.
Excuse me.
Reject.
Sorry. Councilmember Moss, can you say that a little slower? I apologize.
Oh, sorry. Under section 854.1D, we're going to add the word unreasonably before the word reject in the last sentence.
May not unreasonably object.
Not unreasonably.
Manager may accept the conditions or may not object. May not reasonably object to alternative discussion.
All right. May not unreasonably.
And you may want. Go ahead,
Chad. I don't think that it just doesn't.
Yeah, it looks awkward.
It doesn't work. I think it's better just to put a sentence at the end. To just say the village manager or their designee will not unreasonably reject an alternative.
I'm fine with that. Well,
okay,
that's fine.
All right, so we're gonna add the words village will not unreasonably refuse or reject alternative schedules at the end of the last sentence of 854.1D, and we're going to change the first violation to $75.
What do you think? It's one thing to limit arbitrariness. That's a good idea. The risk in drafting around a reasonableness standard is that it's subjective. What do you think about in the sentence at D1, adding the thought that the discretion is guided by the purpose of this ordinance and the county code?
I think that's already a given.
That's what it says.
Yeah, it already says that in the beginning. It's already there. So
I don't feel strongly about it. I've said it. Decision makers, in my experience, sometimes appreciate some qualification and guidance, because the notion of denying a suggestion is typically deemed to be unreasonable by the suggester.
I understand your point. It's just there's significant, I think you'll agree with me, there's significant case law on what the definition of reasonable or unreasonable is. And I think that would be more than enough. That one sentence being added would be more than enough, given everything that's stated previously in the.
I don't feel strongly about it. I don't know. I think your point about the West Side being unduly prejudiced by the need to have a professional licensed applicator is a sensible thought. I'm not even sure I know what that is, but that's a homeowner watering in sod. Sod wouldn't satisfy that requirement.
Like I said, the issues that I brought up, 95% of them, I foresee problems with the single family homes, not with the condominiums. So, I mean, I don't think there'll be a huge delay if we bring this up for second reading at the next meeting after we polish this up a little bit more. We're literally talking 14 days less. If you guys want to vote on this with the amendment that's already been discussed, I'll vote for it. But for sake of clarity, I would suggest those things be cleared up now, so that later on people don't say, oh, I didn't know or I didn't understand what this means. And in 2A, that also doesn't worry me, but what's going to happen? Somebody's watering their lawn, and then a code enforcement comes up to them and goes to find them, and then they gotta go find the receipt? Or do they go to the village and say, hey, I just had this new landscaping put in, here's the receipt, now the period starts? Those are small details, but it's practical details that if they're identified now and we iron them out, it'll have for a much cleaner ordinance down the road.
The only issue I see, Frank, this is the same exact wording they have in the county, which is what we're under for the last, I don't know how many years that we've been under.
Yeah.
So really nothing has changed from today to the day it passes, and then 6 months from now. These things we can't be more restrictive either. So, I'm okay with passing it. I don't think this is going to make a huge change in a lot of things. And I think that, for the record, I really want to tell the village, our administration, that if this is the direction that we want to go into, conserving water, then we really need to put the effort in to work with our residents, not penalize them, but work with them, because it helps everybody. I mean, it helps your bill, your water bill, it helps everybody. And I think we can do this together as a team and really make this happen. Now, obviously, if there are people who just don't care and constantly want to violate, yes, we have the ability to enforce, and we probably will. But I think this is really the main purpose of this is to get to where we want to go by working with our residents. And I think we can do that. I don't think we need to drag the ordinance on and on and on for something that's already is the ordinance. So
this is a very well done. I think it's a very well done ordinance. What do you think about adding with a professional licensed applicator or
We can't hear you, Mayor Davey.
Users may conduct landscape irrigation to water in fertilizers, insecticides, pesticides, fungicides, and herbicides when recommended by the manufacturer by federal, state, practice. If watering in is limited to one application unless the need for more than one application is stated in the directions and watering is conducted. I mean, I guess make that an or, because
no. The thing is that you need to understand is that this is under exception. So this is just outside the time that you're already allowed to do it. If you want to do something outside that time and get accepted, then you have to do it this way.
And it's about fertilizers and insecticides.
Yeah. But if we put or, we're less restrictive than the county, which we're not allowed to be.
We're not allowed to be. So
all right. That's what I'm trying to say.
So we can't change that.
There's nothing we can do. Yeah, and it's an exception. It's not saying that you have to do it. It's just saying if you want to do it outside your allowed time, then you have to do it that way. That's all.
I'm done.
Okay. All right. Call the question, please.
As amended?
As amended. Yes.
You're voting on the ordinance as amended.
Correct.
Thank you. Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Segurola,
Yes.
Mayor Davey,
Yes.
Councilmember Kaplan,
Yes.
Councilmember Laredo,
Yes.
Vice Mayor London.
Yes.
Motion carries. The ordinance is approved on second reading as amended.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I take, it gives me great pleasure to hear this debate, and I want to congratulate Council Member Segurola and Moss for the detailed work and time they obviously put into this. It's absolutely very comforting to be part of this team and to vote for it. And I want to say also that I need to congratulate the administration on the outreach to the condominiums and congratulate the condominiums for their input and the time. The presidents of the association, I think this is a beginning, and hopefully as we cross a lot of difficult issues that need support across the island, that this is a great example that we listen. And that gives me also the opportunity that I'll bring up later under Moss's discussion item that is an issue that concerns me about sometimes we postpone things because, quote, we haven't heard from people. That I don't find that to be an excuse. We do a lot of effort to outreach to people on issues, and then they don't participate. And then after we take a decision, we show up. But that's for later on tonight. But really, it was a compelling demonstration of work on both sides. And I think we should be proud of and thank Segurola and thank Moss.
Absolutely.
You're here.
Right.
Thank you.
Next item.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is public comments.
Pete, you're back at it.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, watching us on channel 77 at home on Comcast, channel 99 on AT&T, or streaming us live via our website. If you wish to speak on any topic to council, please dial the phone number of 305-365-7569 and enter meeting ID of 231-627-8415. For those of you that are currently have joined the meeting and wish to speak, please either dial *9 on your telephones or raise your hand via the Zoom app.
Doesn't look like we have anybody. Okay, let's go to, what time is it? 7:15. We can go to reports and recommendations.
Reports and recommendations, village manager's ongoing project update.
Thank you. Mr. Manager.
Good evening, Council. I'm going to be very brief and to the point. Given right on to police activity, if you take a look at the almost updated chart that you see there, our interaction with our youth has been reduced to almost nothing. And I can tell you that we are still out there in full force. It's not a matter of us reducing the amount of manpower that we're putting out there. What we're finding is people are starting to comply and realize that we're serious about making some of these changes, that we need cooperation from both our parents and our young people, that they do have to follow the law. So I'm very happy to report, similar to when you do different types of campaigns, the less amount of statistics you see, the more success that actually plays itself out. So we'll continue those efforts and move on from there. While we're on police, I don't want to belabor the issue, but I can tell you that from my team and from my accreditation manager, Anna Guerra, this has been a process that's been extremely difficult at best. And this year, of course, we were challenged with having to do it under COVID conditions. And we were actually the second department that had to do a virtual assessment, which changed the game completely. We had to photograph everything, every piece of equipment, every police car, and put it into this magnificent 2-inch, almost 2-inch wide booklet for all the assessors to see, and them do their virtual, review of every policy and every proof. So to get on top of the heap, you got to be great, you got to be consistent, and you got to have an outstanding team. And I'm blessed to have all three of the above. So thank you for bringing that up earlier, Mr. Mayor, and thank my team publicly for what they did. I'm going to read to you. I'm going to move on from that, and I'm going to read to you on vaccines.
Can I stop you for a question?
Yes, sir, please.
There are several, and I don't want to give the names of them, but in which we have juvenile trespasses after hours, which means probably they're already in violation of the curfew.
Correct.
And yet in all of them, we gave, or most of them, warnings. 12 warnings on one, 3 on another one, 5 on another one. Maybe I'm reading this wrong. A warning versus a ticket, or?
You're reading it correctly. So in all of the instances, and I think we need to kind of take a look at just what we were talking about with irrigation, right? The idea is to gain compliance. In the very beginning, it was citation, 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 juvenile citation, very, very strict and rigid. And each and every encounter involves bringing a parent out. So to gain compliance, I think, and to see the amount of reductions in these issues, once we have a parent in front of us and we're able to explain to them what's going on and they actually take ownership of the problem, I think we're seeing the results. So we do have that option, and we went really hard in the beginning, but I believe that's the way you should approach these things, tough. And then as people start to listen, understand, then we actually do more of an education because we've hit them hard already. And that's the reason that you're seeing those numbers the way you are, sir.
Okay, thank you. That helps explain it. As long as they know and we know that we are always ready to fall back to a strict enforcement.
And we were pretty strict on a lot of our traffic enforcement this weekend. That doesn't necessarily, attach itself to a juvenile, but we wrote an exceptional amount of citations this weekend, working with and through Miami-Dade County and the city of Miami in this joint effort that we're doing, not just on the raceway, but actually within our village.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chief.
I want to echo Councilmember Laredo's point. I know you guys have been working hard. I've gotten calls from people. They're happy with what's going on. They're happy with the enforcement. They want to see this, and our people want to make sure that, if people are complying and they're atoning and apologizing for their behavior, great. But if they're not, it's not going to be tolerated. And this community is not going to devolve. So thank you for what you're doing. Let's keep at it.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to talk about vaccines. And I just want to briefly read a quick email that was sent to us by Melissa today, kind of updating you on where she's at. To update you for tonight, in partnership with the Village Community Center's senior programming, the Key Biscayne Community Foundation has scheduled appointments for approximately 230 seniors for vaccinations since January 26th. The administration of this process includes calling over 600 seniors. Thanks to local volunteers and Village Parks and Recreation, 68 seniors have received transportation for first and second shots. So once again, Melissa and her team are just providing a tremendous service to the village, to our seniors. And now that they've expanded the process, I am certain that she will also expand her outreach. With that being said, also, our fire chief, Eric Lang, reached out today to our representative, Nick Duran, to kind of give him a synopsis of how prepared we have been waiting for these vaccines to actually come and reach Key Biscayne. The fact that we're ready to go on a moment's notice, and hoping between the mayor and his outreach to Tallahassee and through our fire chief going into the Department of Health and reaching out directly to our representatives, I think might be a little bit of a push toward the right thing. Next thing I want to talk about is something dear to us all, and that's our adaptive traffic signals update. So I met today via the Zoom with Darlene, who oversees the county operations. She's the head of civil engineering over in the county. A couple of people on her staff. Jake was good enough. Jake, by the way, is now literally in Turkey, but he was made himself available for that meeting. And this was the discussion. And let me just give a little bit of a caveat. This is not going to be a happy discussion. So the first thing that was qualified in that discussion was that adaptive technology does not work in heavy peak periods. Something that initially, when adaptive was put out, was not a discussion throughout the county, but what they're finding is the system simply become overwhelmed during the heavy peak periods. And it literally, in their 3,000 different intersections, and they're not all complete right now, but many of them are, they found out by doing their own study that during these peak times, they were losing the adaptive portion of that technology. It just wasn't pushing traffic through good enough. So they literally went back to, during peak times, making those adjustments manually through their computer on 72nd up there in the county, and doing things differently over there. They also discussed the change in traffic patterns since COVID. Parents have to pick up their kids now after school. There's no more after school programs. There's different patterns similar to what happened after Hurricane Andrew, when the roadways, half the roadways were damaged to the point of people not being able to get through. And it changed Miami-Dade County for good. And our traffic people are concerned that this might be the new norm, that these changes that have come through COVID, as we reach these new norms, these new changes might stay within us forever. So right now, 30% of the signals countywide are in the adaptive mode. And the county follows the mandate in their traffic division, do no harm. And what they mean by do no harm is they try to provide the best system possible without actually creating a worse system at the same time. And so when we discussed what we do during these peak hours and where do we go from here, the idea that police would intercept those intersections and interrupt the timing of the adaptive, yes, that is possible. We would interrupt it, and the computers would regenerate their timing and try and make themselves back to working within our normal traffic patterns. We spoke about next week, they are going to send their traffic engineer to meet with myself and Jake out on the street. We're going to test all the times of our intersections in person. And then for the March 23rd meeting, I am going to bring a representative from county traffic who is going to guide you all through where we're at, where we're going to be. Excuse me. And unfortunately, it's not going to be all of a pretty picture. So here's what I'm looking at. It's not perfect. It's not the panacea, which we've been saying from the get-go. We do have one road in, one road out, and an excessive amount of vehicles on the roadway. They use the example I-95 during rush hour. There are no traffic signals, and it's locked down for 2 or 3 hours every day, Monday through Friday. So sometimes the traffic simply overwhelms the streets, regardless of the signalization. They also talked about the fact that adaptive works better in long stretches of highway because it allows more cars to move, which changes the adaption and allows that thing to take a longer time to read it and continue moving traffic forward, rather than our 6 traffic lights that we have and the short time the technology has to change and work with our traffic patterns. The biggest thing that we could see out of this right now is that on those side streets, when there are no cars, the technology just keeps the north and south going, or the east and west going, and it will actually assist instead of keeping us sitting at an intersection with nobody going at the same time. So I'll bring to you the county on the 23rd. We will meet with them next week, and we'll have a pretty good idea of where we're going on this thing.
Does that include the intersection of Key Colony?
That would absolutely include the intersection.
Be part of it, yeah.
And those are our two biggest issues, Council Member, is the idea that Key Colony and Crandon and Harbor create our log jams for a couple of reasons. They talked about queuing. We don't have enough space to queue. So when people are leaving in the mornings out of Key Colony and they're trying to make a left on the harbor to get to our schools, the queuing blends in to a main lane of traffic that's outbound, thus creating a log jam. So people literally cannot get through traffic outbound. They've got to move as they're going out onto the right lane of traffic to avoid that left turn queue, because it just isn't long enough to carry that traffic. And the same thing works as you're incoming. That queue as you're incoming at Crandon and Harbor for the left turn lane many times leads out into Crandon Boulevard. And once it does that, then you're log jamming Crandon Boulevard because people have to either stop behind there and work their way into the right lane, or the right lane moves quicker than the left lane, and thus it just creates this consistent issue. So the engineers are going to look at all of it, and they'll report to us on the 23rd of March.
Councilmember Segarola, and then Councilmember Kaplan.
Chief.
And then Vice Mayor.
Chief, I'm not blaming you, but I can't get away from the uncanny feeling that what you just told us is that this thing does not do what they told us it was going to do when it was sold to us, and that it's pretty much useless for what we intended it for. Is that correct?
You are pretty close to being right on point.
That's what it sounded like to me.
Is there any way to get our money back?
Well, actually, the good thing is it didn't cost the village a dime.
Right.
Because we got the grants, number one. The idea of us paying for it initially was just so we could move up the pecking chart and not wait till the last village or the last city in Miami-Dade County, which we were scheduled to be the last, to get this technology. And I can also tell you, sir, that when it's not peak hours, the technology serves its purpose.
So when no one's there, it works great.
When nobody needs it, it's great.
I told you wouldn't like the message, and I'm just bringing it to you straightforward.
Well, at least it didn't cost the village anything. Thank you.
Councilmember Kaplan, and then the Vice Mayor.
In advance of the meeting with the county, is there literature on this that we could get and study up?
I can reach out to them and see what we can provide through our vendor, which currently is Econolite. They're the ones who put in the technology, and they have had 300 intersections out of 3,000 throughout the county. So I'll get whatever literature I can and provide it to all seven.
I feel like we had reason to anticipate this. I felt at the time this first came up that we were over-relying and maybe being a little bit seduced by a miracle, a panacea that it seemed to me, given the nature of what happens in Key Colony, was not likely to work. And I must say I'm not terribly surprised, although I'm a little bit disappointed, but not terribly surprised. The one thing that I thought was possible is observing the sequencing of lights turning red and green, the sequencing that causes people to approach an intersection, for example, red light, and then approach the next intersection, red light, meaning that you can't get headway. Right. And I thought that this technology, this by itself isn't a gigantic problem on Key Biscayne, but I think it is a terrible problem in Miami. And I thought that perhaps this technology would assist with that problem.
That is the idea behind the technology, is to read the traffic flow, adopt the timing of the lights, even though they're restricted too. So we've always said FDOT allows only X amount of time per intersection for traffic flow. So the idea of the technology was to do that. It just simply is overwhelmed by the amount of vehicles in South Florida. And so far it hasn't been able to produce the panacea that we wished it would, but we never promised the rose garden. I know that specifically. And one thing Darlene said, and I think this is paramount, the priority of the traffic intersections in South Florida, and in particular on Key Biscayne, the priority is pedestrians. And when that pedestrian pushes that button, that creates an interruption to the entire flow, and that pedestrian crossing that street gets the go-ahead before any vehicles do. So that in and of itself is a huge interruption into our traffic flow. It takes away from the timing and the ebb and flow.
This is an odd way to put it, but you know, it is true. It is true that part of our strategy is simply to get people to drive less. And it's also true that inconvenience helps to prompt those decisions.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to leave that there. Vice Mayor?
Chief has answered my question. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Councilmember Moss?
I just wanted to say that I remember that this was not going to be the silver bullet. I remember they're saying that in heavy traffic, it would be very difficult. However, I've been at these smart lights in other states where they work really well. And, you know, I remember that, you know, I pulled up to a light when there's nobody there, and you sit there and wait, you know, a minute and a half waiting for yours to turn green. And you're like, why am I waiting? There's nobody here. And these things would allow you to cross, and it would just let one car go because it knew it was one car, and it would put the main street back into green and keep going. So, you know, I think it can help for sure, but I know that there's a lot more that we need to do, more than just smart lights. So, but thank you.
All right. Chief, what's next?
Folks, just last thing I've got on the plate is the EV charger program. Jake is in the process of moving that electric along. We had a discussion with the company that's actually bringing the charging stations in. We talked about somebody possibly leaving their cars there for an exceptional amount of time and things like that. The company has looked at all of that. They've actually got a process that will send a text message to the driver advising them that their car is now charged, it's been shut down, to remove your car, etc. So it's going to be a lot of hoping that our residents who do use these charging stations, that they're good to each other, keep Biscayne nice, so to speak, to steal a phrase from somebody up there, and that they move their cars along, because there are warning signals. They will be told when to move them, when not. There is not an ordinance where the police department could cite right now. I'm not looking to move into that ordinance. I would like to see how the program works and see if we do have issues with people leaving it overnight or for too long, etc.
Okay. Councilmember Moss?
So, how does it work? Do they have is there like a credit card or an app that they pay based on how much energy they use, or is this free?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
And can they make it that if you don't unplug your car at the end, it will continue to keep charging you, and that way the person really wants to come and remove their car?
That's a good question. I don't know if they could actually do that, but I would definitely look into that.
Okay.
Thank you. Next item.
That's all I have, gentlemen.
All right, and then you had the emergency repair for the pool heaters, Chief?
Yes,
Mr.
I
Manager?
apologize for that. So real quick, we had a complete breakdown of our heating system in our pool. We had no choice but to order that emergency repair. Those heaters were old, and it was almost 40% of the entire cost of a new heater to just try and repair the heater for however long that repair would last. So we made a decision to go ahead, spend those dollars, and now we're good to go for quite some time. I also want to let you know that we had a major breakdown in our air conditioning system on the police side. and we are in the process of doing the same thing. I went out, got 3 bids, so I am in the process of making an emergency repair and purchase. We're using a bunch of portables in our police station. Those portables are very ineffective when it gets hot, but it's the only way to even give them some type of relief. So we're moving as quickly as possible. I'll bring that back to you all just as a notation, because I did get the 3 bids on that, and it is within my spending balance.
Okay, thank you.
Well, on that issue, Mayor, just a question so I understand the next issues of efficiency. You're bringing this up merely for information purposes. We made a decision a while ago.
Yes, sir.
A broader spending. And the same thing is true of the air conditioning problem. Is there maybe briefly the attorney can tell me why, and you need us, because theoretically, we're not supposed to be meeting as often as we're meeting now with virtual. We have to be efficient in between, the charter calls for only 11 meetings in a year. Is this bidding requirement something that we cannot delegate that authority to you and under 50,000?
The air conditioning, yes, he got 3 bids. It's all within his authority. On the water heaters, the manager had to act quickly and didn't get 3 bids. So underneath the current
question, apparently, Chad, is he has to have 3 bids.
Under the code, he needs to get 3 bids, yes, or he needs to just notify you like he did tonight.
Yeah, or even under 50,000, even within the.
Yes, for an emergency, yes.
And it was an emergency.
That's why he acted.
No, I'm actually to delegate more power. I just don't think.
I agree with you. I agree with you, council member. I think that the next time the ordinance is looked at, we should clean this up a little bit.
Okay. We're all driving to a little bit more efficiency.
Understood.
Okay, thank
you. All right, Vice Mayor?
So do I understand that we're getting 3 bids for the pool? We repaired the pool heater to keep it going. Are we getting 3 bids before we award the contract?
No, he didn't. It was an emergency. So he did the repair or got the new bid, got the new piece.
The AC unit did get bid, so.
He's getting 3 bids for the AC.
We already got them, and we already took the best bid, the lowest bid, and they ordered the part. Unfortunately, it's going to take a while to get here, so we'll be using those portables in the meantime.
No, that was not my question. My question was in regard to the pool heater, not the AC.
Okay.
My question is, do we have 3 bids for pool heaters?
No, sir.
That's why.
And the reason I didn't do that, sir, was we were in the process of using the pool actually, and we finally were able to open up some things at the community center, and I made the decision to just go ahead and get that fixed as quickly as possible because our folks went without that use for a long time. I didn't want to delay the process.
Well, I understand we repaired it, spend the 7,000 or 8,000. I'm talking about the 27,000 to buy a new system. Do we get quotes for that? I'm completely in agreement with getting the emergency repair. My question is, are we going to get 3 bids to replace it? That's all.
No, sir. The reason I did not was because when it looked like we were going to spend 40% of the total cost just to repair a part that is old anyway, I made a decision to go ahead and replace the unit.
Okay, so you didn't spend the 7,000 to fix it.
Correct. I did not.
Okay, but so my question really is, I understand. I think it's a good suggestion what you did to buy the new system. The question is, why not get 3 bids? That's all.
Just like it took us a while to get those 3 bids for the air conditioning, I didn't want to delay people's use of the pool, and people were complaining. They were unhappy, and I wanted to do my best to keep them as happy as possible, and that's why I did it, or didn't do it.
Yeah, I come on the other side, and I'm extremely fiscally conservative, but I also believe in streamlining management, and that's why we increase the authority. And we just can't, again, we're not a micromanaging council. And whoever our manager is, we review it every year, and that's how it's done in all corporations that I've been involved with. It is, I think that even the bidding sometimes should be waived if you feel it's an emergency. Air conditioning, a pool that serves one of the few things in the community center that's open, and requires action. People, let's don't be penny wise and dollar stupid. And I think maybe perhaps, I don't know, with the chat, if you look at the ordinance and maybe down the road, bring it up so that we can clean up the language to make sure that we have, and then of course you would report to us on the expenditure, and then we'll make our judgments as we are a board of directors about those executive decisions.
Right.
But I mean, we can't possibly just sit with something not functioning and not doing it because of these things. So anyway, maybe Mayor and the chat we can bring it up for another time.
Okay.
All right, next.
Next item, Mayor and council members, the entry block, Councilmember Laredo.
Well, thank you for putting this on the agenda. The entry block has been a matter of discussion for so long, and we've had, of course, not too many years ago, a very controversial decision on an application that was not acceptable to the people in Key Biscayne through its elected officials. And it sits there. Our duly appointed board of distinguished citizens dedicated a lot of time to this. As ongoing chairman, it says they have on many occasions suggested that we start a process of looking at the possibilities of public use as the best and highest use for the taxpayers of this community in terms of increased property values and in terms of mitigating traffic jams. And ironically, now it's become more sophisticated on flood and flood mitigations and stuff that also could have that component. We don't need to tonight.
Froze.
There's been a whole bunch of things going around. The community is full of rumors because, as you probably know, certainly if you go out, you can see that there are multiple people who supposedly represent the owners and making all kinds of claims that we're going to do this and we're going to do that and to be honest with you, it's creating a lot of confusion in most of the community. I happen to have a view of what the best and highest use is, but at least what I want to bring it up is an issue that is very important. We're spending a lot of time and money on our vision plan, but this is the key final piece of property that can make our community whole, particularly if the people accept our recommendations. But we cannot sit around and be reactive any longer. There have been some duly legal actions by the current owners that on fencing that created unexpectedly without us knowing chaos to our tax-paying businesses in the adjoining shopping center. So people are looking for us some sort of leadership. I am very aware that this is not an easy issue for any of us, but I think we at least have to show leadership in starting something. Parallel to these things, as you know, there have been all kinds of sales that keeps going up in prices without any significant changes in zoning or anything else. So it's all, when you have these things, it creates all kinds of conversations and conspiracy theories, and and then we have a whole bunch of people speaking perhaps with our authority about what they're going to bring before us. So I think that we should be proactive and authorize the management to at least reach out formally about the possibility of possibly acquiring for public use. Of course, subject to a final decision and whatever that may be, us and a referendum, whatever you want. But what I think is not acceptable, I could be reading it wrong, from the public, is us just sitting. And of course, it's not as a big an eyesore as it used to be. But I believe that the time is right for us to take a step, a limited step. We don't need to talk about design. We don't need to talk about price. We don't need to get ahead of the bridge, but to get started formally. In the past, we've had conversations that we have
Councilmember Segarola.
I'm just going to throw this out there just to express my feelings on this. Oh, okay, he froze.
No, what I was trying to do, Segarola and others, is also to cut out the possibility of misunderstandings. Some people approach even members of the Open Spaces Board. So it's become kind of an informal, and we are the formal representative in a democratic representative democracy of the people of Key Biscayne. Nobody else is. And I, in a very limited way, I'd like to move this forward. That would be my issue for your consideration.
Now, Councilmember Segarola.
I just want to make my feelings just known on this for the record, and then everyone else can talk about it. I've always found that entry block to be a very awkward piece of land. It has possibly the worst ingress and egress of any piece of property in the village. It is too big for some things and too small for other things. There is a very good reason why it's sat empty all this time, because it is just not a very useful or good piece of land. I know some people really are interested in that. My interest in that piece of property is very, very low. And unless we're discussing, or there's a future discussion of buying this property for basically a song, I'm not in favor of buying land just for the sake of buying land. A library doesn't fit on there. A park of any useful size, in my opinion, doesn't fit on there. If you're talking about kids going to and from it, you're talking about crossing the heaviest intersection in the village. I don't value this land very much. That's just my 2 cents.
And Councilmember Moss, and then Councilmember Kaplan.
I think that what Councilmember Laredo brought up, I think is good. And I think that I'm open to follow that direction and have our manager reach out to see if there's any willingness to start these discussions again. I know we've had them in previous meetings, and we've had negotiations that really didn't go anywhere. I don't share the same views as Councilmember Segarola. I think that, of course, it is in a difficult location. It does require crossing, but I think you can definitely put a library if you wanted to put on it. You can definitely put a park on it. Actually, I think it's actually a more desirable place to put a park rather than some of the small pocket parks, because we can put a much larger piece there. Also, there's possibilities with traffic redirection in some of the most congested areas. So there's lots of things that we could use it for if we would want to, or just beautify it. But, I'm definitely in favor that with that recommendation to have our manager maybe reach out and see where it goes from there.
Councilmember Kaplan, and then Vice Mayor, did you want to speak?
We're done.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing this up. It's obviously, a looming, pretty major and potentially consequential issue and point of decision. One way to look at the public use question, one way to look at it is the elimination of a negative or the mitigation of a negative. And to be sure, this intersection is a problem. It's a proven problem. I coincidentally tried to get off the island at 8:30 this morning and spent, 4 light cycles of 5 minutes each at St. Agnes, not creeping many feet along towards the intersection. It was so blocked up. So, over the time that we've all thought about this site and looked at conceptual ideas for what could be developed there, the one use that always garners a negative backlash is virtually any commercial use. In other words, anything it's zoned for. That's always been, it's always been a problem. In fairness to the owner, however, I don't know what they're thinking. I spoke with an ownership group years ago and nothing came of it. Many of us did. Nothing came of those discussions. I'm aware of the notion that they've developed a plan. I have seen elements of it. I haven't studied it. It might be fair and consistent with our responsibilities to do so, to look at it. If they want to present something, consider it. If on the other hand, if we determine that the public interest is disserved by development on that site, or is better served by the acquisition of that site by the village for a public use, then we have two options. And this gets to Councilmember Laredo's suggestion. We can negotiate a consensual sale if it's possible to do so, or we have the power of eminent domain. And if we think that it's the right, ultimately and necessary thing to do to control that site for public use, for the better public interest, those are our options. And I would support either option. But I would also I think it's fair to hear the owner out and to consider what they have to say.
Vice Mayor?
Basically, this piece of property by the prior owner, who was a very successful shopping center commercial developer, who brought us the potential of having a drugstore there, which obviously we didn't approve because of the egress and access, the traffic problems, etc. And in that case, the drugstore was not interested in going there. He has offered this to every major tenant that you can think of. Everyone has turned it down. Fortunately for him, unfortunately for the new buyers, because the first buyer got it for basically $5 million, but the new buyers had this grand plan which which would never be approved, and who paid a top dollar for it. I think it was 15.5 or 17 million, some telephone number. And of course, now has been stuck with it for many years. He has tried many different people to come there and see if they can make a deal. Obviously, as Ignacio has said, it's a lousy site. The access, egress, traffic, it's terrible. So as a result, it'll sit there until the owners realize they've made a monumental mistake. I understand the lead partner in it has been discharged because of this, and they're just sitting there hoping that something happens. And by us talking about how much we want it, just gives them more impetus to keep the price high, figuring, hey, these guys don't care about, they're spending somebody else's money. They'll buy it from us at a high price. So at this point in time, should we talk to them? Sure, we can talk to them. But do you want to pay their price? I mean, some of our council members don't care what we spend, so I'm sure some of you will vote for it. But obviously, it has very little commercial value because of the zoning, because of the location. So at this point in time, you want to ask them what they want for it? Well, makes no difference. Go ahead. I mean, you want to go pay them? Frank says, hey, we should have it. It's in the best public interest. If we go to eminent domain, it'll cost us an absolute fortune. Fortune to buy what? To do what with it? As Ignacio says, what are you going to do with the property? Make it pretty. Brett said we have all these other things, and he talked about, I'm not exactly sure what he said, but it sounded good. So at this point in time, you want to have the manager call him and ask what you want for it? Great, do it. And then they come back to us, no problem.
I think
hold on, I'd like to speak first. I'm going to shock Ed. I may put him into cardiac. I'm going to agree with Ed. Yeah, no, I think, Ed, look,
agree with me.
It's ruined my reputation right here and now. No, I have no problem with the manager reaching out and having this conversation. I think it never hurts to talk. But at the same time, this piece of land, I think we've talked about it, has just never, I'm not saying there aren't opportunities for us with this piece of land, but we are not going to pay what they want us to pay for this. I'm sorry. Yeah, I can't see that working. That said, I'm absolutely all in favor of having the manager reaching out. I agree with Councilmember Laredo's point. Let's see where we are with this. I mean, maybe they want to make a donation to the village of Key Biscayne for the betterment of society. I would appreciate that. But, I want us all to go in understanding I'm not advocating the purchase at this point. I'm not advocating eminent domain, slow or fast. I'm just saying, let's have a conversation. and let's see where we go from there.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
since
sir.
I'm the maker of the motion, I took pains to try to do the Kissinger incremental approach to negotiations. And what I wanted was very limited, which was to give discipline and therefore seriousness to our role, to shut out all the self-appointed representatives
100%.
on both sides, to give that authority strictly to the manager and not to any one of us to go talk to them. Agreed. And he would duly report, and to literally just explore. We will have answers to the concerns that London and others and myself about the proper use, the proper price, et cetera, et cetera. But all I'm trying to do today is formalize the process that I think our citizens like to see. And so if we can just limit it to that, that is the spirit and limit of my motion. I don't want to get into price or proper use. That's for later. So
great. I wanted to articulate that I'm
And
absolutely.
I agree with you. I alluded to both of your concerns as to price because I didn't want to get too far ahead. That there have been a lot of changes in ownership that normally some of us have been in business and had much longer in real estate doesn't seem to match the potential. And so therefore, it just keeps going up. But that's for us not to decide today. If we can do this, we'll become more efficient, as per Mr. Moss' suggestion. We're going to discuss in a few more minutes, and very seriousness to our role, and also more seriousness about the fact that we're looking at this seriously, whatever the decision will be done down the road. So with that, I would make the motion with those very limited, and obviously the manager can bring in chat if anything moves.
Vice Mayor, I saw you waving your hand.
Thank you. One last comment. Since we're talking about acquiring land and capital, we spent over $2 million for the Hampton Park. I don't know how many of you have gone there lately. It is a total disaster. I don't think anybody uses it, and it looks awful. We don't maintain it, and it's absolutely a disaster. So I really think the first thing we should do is take care of what we have before we buy something else. Now, I don't know whose purview that comes under, whether it's the SCM landscaping contract we have, if it's public works. All I can tell you, if you have nothing else to do, go take a look at that and you'll be sick. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I see people using that park.
Yeah, so do I, but I haven't seen it in a while. All right, so Councilmember Laredo, does everybody agree that we direct the manager to have the conversation?
Sure. Why not?
Okay,
sure.
Let's do it.
Make it an emotion so it's clear.
Okay, you make the motion. It's your motion, Councilmember.
To authorize the manager, with the assistance of the village attorney, as he seems appropriate, to look into the possibilities of the use of this for public use and report to us at the time that he feels he's got the full, and that therefore there is clear that there's no other line of authority in this government to negotiate or talk to the owners.
There's a second for the motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Motion carries. The next item, adjusting the start time of council meetings from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Councilmember Moss.
Yeah, I brought this up because Councilmember Laredo, I think, brought this up a couple of meetings ago. I didn't think it was a bad suggestion. But we have been very close to canceling meetings. Maybe many people don't know this, but getting a quorum in the conditions of during COVID is very difficult. I like to be one of the people who are here. I try to be here when I can, even though my wife, she has issues with that. But I'm sure everybody's worried when people are meeting. But the problem is that, under my personal conditions, we both work, my wife and I work full time. We're dealing with our kids at home. We have to take care of our kids. They're schooling from home right now. So it's very difficult. So a difference between 1 hour is huge on making sure that we have a meeting. And I think it would relieve a a lot of people stress on starting the meeting. So I understood what Councilmember Kaplan talked about, that there are many people in the public that enjoy the early start, but I think that with the conditions that we're in, I think it's going to ease the ability to have a quorum by moving it to 7 o'clock. So I'm asking that we go ahead and entertain that idea to move it to 7 o'clock start.
Okay, Councilmember Kaplan, and then Councilmember Segarola, and then Councilmember Laredo. I think you spoke up.
I really hope we don't do this. It was the right decision when we made it earlier. It was widely, if not wildly, appreciated because it just made public participation better, easier, more convenient. It was, I think, appreciated by the administration that supports us in our meetings because they can get home at a decent hour. You know, people can help with homework. They can have dinner with their families when they get home. We're able to get to the manager's item at a reasonable hour. We're able to get to this topic in our agenda, which is discussion, which I think is important for public participation, more so in a way, not more so, but different in a way than legislation. Legislation is past work that culminates, comes to fruition, and is the result, is a subject of an action. The discussion items, I think people often really appreciate participating in that part of the discussion because that's where the trend is going. That's what's coming next. And it's good not to do that at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. The times in the past, and you know, Brett and I were in service together, when we would get to 10:30, 10:45, have to extend the time when we're tired, when we're frustrated, when patience starts to lapse, and we have major substantive things to do at that hour under those conditions, it just ain't ideal. And I would do anything to accommodate your convenience in your family and your life, really. I hate to say this, but I really feel like there are a lot of people that benefit from the earlier start. If it were up to me, I'd make it at 10 o'clock in the morning, or I'd do it at 5 o'clock at night or 4 o'clock in the afternoon to get through our business at a manageable hour and still let people have lives at home. That's my view.
Councilmember Segarola?
I too like the 6 o'clock start time. Our meetings lately with coronavirus, and because we've been meeting every 2 weeks, have been going by faster. So we've been leaving at a decent time. My fear is if we bump it back to 7 p.m., as has happened in the past, we have started at 6, and many, if not most meetings, we hit the 11 o'clock deadline and we have to extend the meeting. If we jump back to 7, we're going to have even less time to deal with that. That's my fear about bumping it back to 7. It all, of course, depends on the agenda. But because of when and if this is ever over, we may go back to those very long meetings. I would not want to change the time now.
Okay. Council member, I see a vice mayor, but Council member Laredo, and then the vice mayor.
Yeah, ironically, my original suggestion of all of us, probably the one, and maybe Ed would be the other one, that are perfectly comfortable with 6 o'clock because I do not have kids. I don't have those kinds of office hours that demand that be at a certain time in your profession. We forget sometimes ourselves, like we remember when we fought the county and the city with Ultra, we had to message the mayor, you and I and others, that we're not a bunch of rich people here. We're a bunch of hardworking professionals and who pay good taxes, but they work very hard and they have hours. And actually, watching and my inclination in favor of professional women, you see our councilwoman McCormick, particularly with 4 kids, I just felt terrible that she would have to rush through for 6 o'clock and then the pressures of being late. This is like the wrong, what we're doing is applying the wrong medicine to the disease because we're being inefficient, which we're going to talk in a minute. We're being inefficient in running our meetings, which is something we need to review. And we did it at the first retreat that we had, remember, when we first got elected 2 years ago. We don't need to worry about these long meetings. And specifically on the issues that have to do like this discussion, we ought to talk about moving it to the front of the meeting. There is not any just council member, and certainly not any working class or working professionals that I know that appreciate 6 o'clock, because they cannot leave even Brickell at 5 o'clock. If they could get out of their law office or their bank and make it and set up and say hello to their wife and their kids and be online at 6 o'clock. So I originally, of all who have the least, thought I would be the proponent of it in favor of all of you, and including yourself, Mayor, who has a beautiful daughter, to me. But I don't buy the efficiency issue. That's kind of the wrong medicine. You know, we should not have these at a $33 million company, and I've been in companies a lot larger, these 4 or 5 hour board meetings, it is not correct. It's not good management. It's not being done by a lot of other municipalities. Check out Weston, check others that are doing short meetings, and they have efficient, cost-effective management. We delegate authority to our professionals to get things done. So I believe that I want to accommodate people with family who are professionals, including our council members and participants. So I have the exact opposite reading from Mr. Kaplan, and also to start forcing us to be efficient. So I think this is a very healthy, and we can always revert back, but right now, you know, it's tough. I cannot imagine being a parent, to be honest with you, and make 6 o'clock. I really don't. I'm not being facetious. I really don't.
Vice Mayor?
Well, you know, at my advanced age, you're supposed to go to bed early. So as a result, if we have the meetings early, I can go to bed early. And if I don't go to bed early, you and I can go to either to Novecentro or to one of the other watering pubs afterwards. But if we start at 7, by that time, it'll be too late to go out afterwards. So I say stay.
All right. Yeah, I've done the 7 and I've done the 6, and I do understand Councilmember Moss's points. And you know, look, I think we're doing a fairly good job of moving the meetings along as of late. But I agree, we can always be more efficient. But I'm inclined to stick with the 6 o'clock. If you'd like, we could move the cutoff time to 10 o'clock. You know, the 11 o'clock hour that was established as the cutoff time was simply that, just established. We could move that time to 10 o'clock if you're all worried about long meetings. And then, you know, understand that we have a 10 o'clock gun. I like the fact that it's 8:15 or so, and we're into our reports and recommendations, and we can start moving forward. But yeah, I'm inclined to stick at 6 o'clock right now. Councilmember Moss, you're recognized.
Yeah, so again, I don't want to get this a little bit confused here. So just so everybody knows, I think 3 years ago it was my motion to move it from 7 p.m. to 6 p.m. because we were having issues at completing the meetings. But what it does come down to efficiency, I agree with Councilmember Laredo, is that whatever time we start, if we start at 4, we're going to finish at 11 on big agendas. I mean, we will extend the time. When you shorten the time, people, you know, shorten the discussions, and we try to move quicker. I like the 6 p.m.s. The problem that I have is that on Tuesdays I work from home, taking care of the kids. My wife is at work in Doral. She has to get home. For her to leave at 5 o'clock to get home to release me to come here is really, really difficult. And I would like to maybe propose, if this is a temporary thing, that we could do while we're doing the hybrid meetings, if that's okay. And once we get out of the hybrid meetings, we go back to the 6 o'clock. I would be completely in favor of that. But I just want to make sure that we don't have a canceled meeting. And, you know, I mean, it would be easier if I was at home and we can get somebody in here. But as you know, as our clerk can tell you, that it has come down very, very close to having to call in a canceled meeting. And 1 hour could make a big difference. So, you know, I don't know if you guys would want to meet in the middle at 6:30 or do it just temporarily. But if you guys are okay with 6, I'll accommodate, and I'll have to figure it out. And, you know, maybe a couple meetings I might not be able to make. So
one thing, I mean, I will always be here. And you should work from home. You know, you should Zoom in. I will always be here. You'll always be here. If we can get 2 people then you'll have a better accommodation.
All right, I'm fine with that. I mean,
I'm sorry that we can't accommodate.
That's fine.
The best intentions. I find that I'm surprised at Ed's because I mean I've been until recently on the board of an energy company. It's always $3 billion, and our board meetings never lasted more than 2 hours. And Ed, you have so much experience on boards, on airlines, and others. I think we need to address the very next issue, which is efficiency. And this is kind of trivial.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Do it.
And I just find it admirable that you guys are doing this with small kids. I really do. So
let's go to the next item.
Vote it down. You want to make it?
It was a discussion item. We don't. There's no need to have a vote.
So we're sticking to 6 then.
Right now we are, yeah. But we're gonna have to have.
And I am gonna be here at 6, at 5, or 7, whatever you all decide. I'm the one who has the flexibility.
Right.
And I guess Frank.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Next item.
Next item, consideration for time management and efficiency of council meetings. Council Member Moss.
Okay, I've brought this up in the past too. So, it's one of my pet peeves when I see sometimes we go off track and we get inefficient. And, I just want to take this time, and this is not to anybody particular. I'm probably guilty just as much as anybody else. But we need to sometimes just stop and look back and make sure that we are respectful for each other's time. Because, we're all very busy. We want to get home. We don't want to stay here too long. But we do have a resolution, 2016-27, that is the special rules and procedures for meetings. And it's a responsibility, I think, of council to, take a look at this and find ways that we can work better. For instance, number 14 says council members should endeavor to limit extraneous and unnecessary discussions at council meetings by seeking to address questions and confirm information on agenda items and pending matters in advance of meetings. Also, on top of that, on number 3, council members should endeavor to address questions or corrections in minutes in advance of council meetings, enabling insubstantial corrections to be addressed and revised minutes to be timely disseminated. And, I do see a lot of times that we may ask for information, but we really need to take our time to do the homework, meet with our administration in advance to get those things answered, and that way that we can move much quicker than trying to do it from the dais, because I think it's the wrong place to do it. And if you're still not have anything answered by the time the meeting starts, I think we should maybe defer it unless an action needs to be taken or there's some type of emergency. But I think it's a way that we can move it. But on top of that, I just want to say that it's interesting that this came up on probably our most efficient meeting I think I've ever sat in at the same time. So, but I just wanted to bring this up, and I'm sure that this can be a never-ending area, but I think we need to be considerate and think about how we can be more efficient.
I agree with you. I think, we can always endeavor to be, that was one of the intents behind my suggestions for the amendments to the 2016 referendum, which really included everything we've done as a council really since inception. So I agree with you. I think we can all look at our time management and be as efficient as possible. I do agree with you. I think the more prepared we are, as I think you and Councilmember Segarola were extreme, on that ordinance. You guys came in with your comments and you were ready to go. But I would recommend that have those discussions with staff so that they're ready, even if you just send them your questions ahead of time so that they can be prepared for what we're going to throw at them up here on the dais, because that's how we actually get the real information and that's how we can move things forward in an efficient manner.
Mayor, may I just say, let's try to be frank with each other and not be politically correct. This is what happened before, and it happened to be, he said, for example, that he got his agenda package on a Sunday. I got it on an early Thursday morning. I think we have a responsibility. We wanted, nobody forced us to be in this council. We wanted to do our homework, just like you read from the Councilman Moss, like you read from that. All those ordinances and stuff are not going to change the behavior unless we change our behavior. I'll change it as much as possible to accommodate that. But I try to be prepare when I get here. In fact, that's why I've told the management also that to stop these PowerPoint, thank God we have stopped the PowerPoint presentations and all of that stuff, which you already read, because we already got the stuff like 6 days before. But you know, it's not, if somebody's getting stuff on Sunday, either there's something going on, or, and I know both Ed and you, I have been traveling too, but I also get it online. And I tried, like I did with the chief this morning, the 6 questions I had, he answered them. So we need to, beyond this ordinance and all this stuff that Moss quoted, we need to just get real about each other's time. And when I'm, you know, get ready to vote. And that's more than you know, I've noticed, I guess item 4 coming up is still on. I received at 4:26 p.m. an email relevant to that. That is unacceptable. Because if it's an issue so important as a 530 Park, I mean, I'm not going to discuss something, but well, we'll cross that later. I think we need to individually take responsibility, and sometimes we won't be able to do our full homework because of our pressures, our business pressures and our family pressures. But then, you know, you're going to have to just chill out and don't impede the whole process from moving, because it's just becoming one barrier on top of the other. And we are being lately very efficient. Thank you. That's good reflection there, at most. But I think that we need to be more responsible. And I remind you again to our first retreat at the Ritz-Carlton, which I brought this up and is in that document, that when we talked about efficiency with then manager Aga, that we had a responsibility to make management more efficient. If they're constantly preparing agendas and backups, I don't know what time they have to manage. And we just, we sort of table that. We ask a lot of information, by the way. One of the reasons I want to review down the road, the boards that we streamline, and we're going to come back to that, is that they themselves were creating a lot of work for our limited management staff, each of the committees. So, you know, we got to really tackle this with candor about our own behavior. And I'm include myself in it, by the way. I've been guilty of not being efficient. I'm doing my best to change. But we got to get serious about moving this organization to shorter meetings. It doesn't, you know. Anyway, enough said. I don't know, Councilor Moss, what you want. Is this a motion or?
It's just a discussion item. Vice Mayor is up next, and then Councilmember Kaplan.
I think each of us knows the other's accomplishments, the other's histories, where we've all been. And I think if we would just stick to the subjects and not tell everybody why our experience gives us the reason to agree or disagree or say why we should do something, but rather just stick to the point. And if we could be more brief in our discussions, again, sticking to the point and saying something in 1 minute instead of 5 minutes, I think we'd find a much more efficient meeting. We'd accomplish a lot more, and we'd stick to the point. So if we all do that, we all know each other, we all know where we've been, what we've done, and go forward with that and not keep reiterating our histories, but rather just move forward. And again, say something in 1 minute rather than 5 minutes, I think we'd be much more efficient and the meetings would be much shorter and we'd accomplish a lot more.
Councilmember Kaplan.
Took the words right out of my mouth. And one other observation, which is really a point of constructive criticism that all mayors contend with, which is when something is on the table, it's easy to lose the thread of what's actually before the council for a decision. Because the conversation, when extraneous points arise, easily tips into other things. And if we all are self-aware of those moments when they occur and prevent them from occurring by being disciplined and sticking to what's on the table, we'll help each other be pertinent. And I guess to Ed's point, if we hear ourselves talking too much, we should be self-aware and shut up.
Councilmember Segurola, anything to add?
I will exercise. I will follow by example and stay quiet.
There you
I said
go.
it all.
All right, beautiful. Very nice. All right, next item. Next item is
the park.
Yes. Status of 530 Crandon, Councilmember Segurola.
Okie doke. As everyone can see in the email sent out by Chief Press this afternoon, we have a long tortured history with 530 Crandon. Goes back approximately 18 and a half years, which is incredible. The last time we discussed 530 Crandon as a park was about a year ago, before the pandemic began.
Right.
There is absolutely, in my opinion, no reason why this should still be going on. We have plans, we have a budget. I was informed by, I believe it was Jake earlier, that the last estimate we had for the park was $1,277,000. And since then, we've qualified for $200,000 in grants. So that brings the total price of the park for $1,077,000. Basically, this park has been talked to death, worked and reworked. We spent more money talking about it and designing it as a village than possibly the park itself. I think we just have a choice. We either accept it as is, as an open space, and hey, everybody can enjoy it, or we pull the trigger on what we have. But let's do something to move this forward. I don't think there's any reason to delay it any longer. It is at the center of the village. Let's just get it done.
Bring it forward next meeting.
I will ask Jake to prepare things so that we have something to vote on for the next meeting.
100%. I back you up. I know Dr. Kelly is thrilled somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, let's go.
We'll be prepared for it.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is the Miami Beach resolution. Mayor Davey.
Right. And I apologize. This item came to me.
Move it. I read it and I move it.
All right, perfect. I just want to give the synopsis to everybody. This is efficiency. Councilmember Laredo, this is perfect. This is essentially the Miami Beach is sending a resolution. They want all communities to sign off on this in order for us to sort of get start getting the governor to acknowledge, we have 13% of the population. We had 22% of the cases. We have 8% of the vaccines here. We need to prioritize law enforcement and teachers as well as others. That's in the resolution. I want your support. I'd like to get this done so we can send it along with the other communities that are involved. If you're not comfortable voting on this right now, I understand. I would ask that you read it and then come back. And if you can give me a consensus later on, I'd appreciate that. Or if you want to if we can have a vote now, and then if you want me to wait 48 hours, if you change your minds, I don't know how we work that, Chad.
I second it.
Okay. I think first, if you're going to vote on the resolution, we need to read it. We have to read the title for it. And then we would need to read that title into the record, and then we can then adopt it with the whereas clauses. So, I had trouble pulling up the document you sent, Mayor.
Okay.
The title was not clear on the version that was forwarded to me by the clerk. I don't know.
It's a resolution of the mayor and village council of the village of Key Biscayne, Florida, urging Governor Ron DeSantis to prioritize the following groups in phase 2 of the COVID-19 vaccine administration: teachers and support staff members, police officers, and other frontline essential workers as specified by the United States Centers for Disease Control Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, including firefighters, correction officers, public transit workers, childcare workers, food and agricultural workers, manufacturing workers, United States Postal Service workers, and grocery store workers, and persons with medical conditions that increase the risk of severe COVID-19 as certified by a physician.
That's the title?
That's the title.
That's fine. And then the whereas clauses will adopt as is. And clearly this is a time sensitive matter, so that's why we're doing it. So correct. You can approve the resolution as just read into the record, and we'll prepare it and have it for your signature.
Perfect. I very much appreciate it.
Let's do it.
Okay, everybody okay on this?
Hold on, so there's no question about your authority.
Right. Okay.
Just a motion, a second. Yep.
Right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you all very much.
Mayor, one a very brief comment and the other one a question for you.
Certainly.
I took Mr. London's comments and, very well, and I will abide by it. And I just want to make sure you all hear my comment, whatever applies. I expect all of us to do our homework before we get here.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
That the manager selection, Mr. Mayor, timeline is very vague to me.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are asking me, including some candidates, what do you have in mind in terms of time?
Well, I guess we should. Sorry, go ahead.
Pause that for 1 second. I didn't want to interrupt Councilmember Laredo, but just because we did add that to the agenda, the last item, I don't think we have anybody from the public on that wanted to speak, but if we just make that announcement.
Okay, Pete, you're up again. Busy night.
Ladies and gentlemen, watching at home on channel 77 on Comcast, channel 99 on AT&T, or streaming live via our website. If you wish to comment, please dial the phone number of 305-365-7569. Then please enter the meeting ID of 231-627-8415. For those of you that are currently logged into our meeting, if you wish to speak, please dial *9 via the telephone, or if you are logged in on the Zoom app, please raise your hand.
All right, so this would be on the comment on the resolution that we just passed.
Correct. I don't see anybody.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I just wanted to make that clear.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. So sorry, Councilmember Laredo, about the manager search. My thinking was that, I know we'd set the second for our date, and I apologize that I didn't add this as an item, because I do want all of your input on this. With regard to, I think it's important that we all meet, as we've done in the past, with the candidates in person and have sort of a communal event. I don't know how to do it, and I want your thoughts. Obviously it's got to be with social distancing. It's got to be, maybe we do it outside. I think that would be the best way to do it, but we need to have that interaction. We need to allow our community to meet these people safely, but we need to do that. I do think we have not gotten the background reports back from all these folks. Mr. Manager.
Mayor, Council, we do not have a complete process yet, and my recommendation would be that we eliminate the March 2nd meeting. The reason for that meeting was we had thought that we were going to do this without outside, entities coming in and doing their due diligence. Since then, we have brought 3 different groups to do backgrounds, to do assessments, etc. Those things are not complete right now. So to have a meet and greet
makes no sense.
We don't even have a background done in its entirety, makes no sense at all. So my recommendation to you is that we complete the process. Right now, we've got 1 down, 2 to go. Our TATE assessments have been done, the online assessments. The folks did their online process, they're done. We're still doing the Journey and Associates. We're doing the Hoffman process. When that is all complete, we will create a package for council, present it to you as a complete package with all the information. Then we bring the folks out for meet and greet. You all have your discussion. You eliminate in those terms, probably about 3 of those folks in that discussion. You take a vote and you leave it to 2, and then you take some time to really get into the weeds with the last 2 remaining candidates, and then you set a meeting date, whether it's an additional meeting, to make that final decision.
Okay. Well, okay. I'd like to hear from all the council members. Councilmember Moss, and then I know Vice Mayor was waving his arms around. I'm not sure if he's about to run into some rocks or not, but he's next.
Let me switch with the Vice Mayor.
Okay, Vice Mayor, you go first.
I'll defer to Brett. I mean, he's younger.
Brett, go ahead.
I'm okay with waiting. I don't think we need to be rushed into.
In all due respect, I disagree with Chuck Press. I think that we should continue with our second meet and greet. I don't think it makes any difference. We're probably not going to eliminate anybody by the time we get back these tests, these evaluations, and the background checks. So therefore, it's just delaying things for a little bit longer. So if it's going to be a meet and greet, if we want to talk to everybody, have them public, then I think we should continue. I also do, again, I'm agreeing with you, Mike. I think that we should get together, whether it's been outside or somewhere else, but we should get together and move forward with this thing. I think we should be able to, if we can come to a consensus on one, great. If we can't, then maybe we'll get to two. Obviously, if we can get to one and finalize it and we're all happy with it, then that's it. If not, we have two, and then we come back again to get to select the one out of the two. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Brett, do you have a thought? And then Councilmember Kaplan?
I was just going to say that it really doesn't make much difference to me when, if we want to wait until we get all the information back first and then have the meet and greet, that's fine. I mean, what's the difference going to be? Maybe 2 weeks or so. I think we should have it in March. It would be good if we want to push it out a little bit, fine, but we can still have it. But
I just wanted to have everybody's input, and I apologize for not, but I was thinking I want to hear from everybody about if you're all comfortable with having a meet and greet, we can organize the meet and greet.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
I think
we should.
If I may.
Yeah, of course.
Meet and greet is one thing, but if we're going to be doing in-depth interviews, we need the information from these.
100%. I mean, I agree with you.
But I mean, I understand the urgency for the meet and greet because this is dragged on, but depending on the information that comes out in everything we're doing, the tone and flavor of the meet and greets can be very different depending on the candidates. Maybe nothing comes back on anyone. Maybe something comes back on one or more. I don't know. That's the problem about going in blind. If we've waited this long, I agree. I mean, if we can get a date from our vendor as to when all this information would be done, I can't imagine it'll take more than another week or two. Maybe by the next meeting, March 9th, we can set the date for the meet and greet.
That was going to be my recommendation but I wanted your input to make sure that everybody seems to be in agreement that a meet and greet's good.
And we can do it toward the end of March.
Right.
I assume, Chuck, you may know, Connie, I think, made pretty clear when she proposed her scope that she had a hard stop in March, sometime in March. So her work will be done.
March 30th, sir.
Right.
But
March
she also
30th.
gave us 6 weeks from the time that we hired her. So I think that's probably before the March 31st. So I'm guessing mid-March we should be receiving something from her.
Yeah, I mean, so real quick, I want to meet everybody in person. We should do it outside. We should, make arrangements so that it's very safe. We should do a community event and same thing, make it safe, make it distance, but we should do that.
Right.
I don't think things have really dragged. I've made this point before. I think this has moved along at its own pace. It's been fine. I don't see any magic to next week in having a community event. And I'd rather.
No, I don't either on that.
I'd rather wait until we know what we need to know.
Right. All right. So at the next meeting, we'll hopefully have enough information to just set a date for a community meet and greet.
I've been meeting with people at the beach club, for example. It's outdoors. It's very nice. It's Ski Biscayne. Maybe something like that.
Or at the beach park. Yeah, right. We could do something. Okay.
My question
Yes, sir.
goes on answer. We are not prepared to set an efficiency about when we're going to make a decision.
Well, we're still waiting on all the data.
But I mean, it's March next week. I thought March 9th, we can try to aim for the March 9th meeting to see if we have something from her.
Well, right. That's what I said. That's what I think we all agreed on.
Meet and greet. I'm with your meet and greet wherever you want to do it. I'm trying to figure out when we're going to decide so that we can move this community forward. Also the candidates and the citizens. I don't think we should delay this any more than the end of March, whether it takes an extra meeting. I'm talking about a meeting to decide, not a meeting to have a meet and greet.
The meeting to decide, I think, has to take place after the community meet and greet, because we're going to have community members who are going to want to have their say so. I mean, every time we've had the managers come in, we've then established, really around the same time that we've had the meet and greet, we've had them all come in, and we've done an event here in the chambers where they've all really been interviewed right here at the
Mayor. You're not prepared, and my colleagues, to make a decision on a date when a goal of when we need to decide. Is that the answer to my question?
I think that's my answer. Yes, I'm not prepared to set a date until I have the information. That's correct.
Somebody asked me, when are you going to decide? We don't know.
I think tentatively, I would say April 6th is when we can start to go through the process of electing people. Tentatively. Now, if something needs to get pushed, we can always change it, or we don't have the information and it's not long enough, we can always move it. But that's at least in my head where I'm aiming is April 6th and April 27th if we need a second meeting, because it may be that we want to limit it down to the top two and then go another meeting and select the one. But that's what I have in my head at least.
Okay. I mean, that's a fair date. I think that's conservative. I think you're right. But so beginning of April, I guess, would probably be, yes. Vice Mayor, go ahead.
My dear friend Luis basically talks about representative democracy. I agree with him. We've been elected by the community to make decisions. Are we going to run a popularity contest with meet and greet from people of the community? Is that what we're going to do? Or are we going to evaluate, make their decisions ourselves? And that's what it really comes down to. I mean, what does it matter what the people in the community say about these people that we're going to do the research for, if in fact we're representatives of those people? That's where I'm coming from. And also,
I would agree, but I would also allow them to have the opportunity to meet people in the community.
We got notice back in October or September that she was leaving. This is now March, okay? Or excuse me, still February, almost March. And where are we? We're just wasting lots of time, not making decisions, moving at a snail's pace. And it really is, fortunately, we don't have to make a profit. Unfortunately, we can tax people. So we always know where the income is coming from. So the business we run won't go bankrupt. By the same token, this is just dragging on and dragging on. This is ridiculous. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. I think you and I still have a lot of things in common.
That's
okay.
Did you want to say something, Brett? Or are we good?
No, I will practice.
I just wanted to say, I think the meet and greet is important. I think, yes, we're elected, but it's good to keep the public informed and have their input and listen to our constituents.
Absolutely.
So I think it is important. I think that, Chief Press is doing a great job of keeping the ship up and running. And I don't think we're going to be going bankrupt because we need to wait a couple more weeks. But I think we need to make the right decision. Correct. I want to get this done as fast as everybody else. I think that April right now is where I'm looking at realistically where we're going to go if we can get there. But I think we should do this in April.
Councilmember Kaplan?
Apart from giving the citizens the respect and buy-in of participating, there are two things that I find that come out of these public events. The first is to see how they comport themselves with the population. There's lessons to be learned from interactions. And the second is follow-up interviews after the social events result in observations that the candidates derive from communicating with people that they then speak to in our follow-up meetings. Those are interesting encounters because they're learning, real life details from real life people. Those are worthy events, it seems to me, for those reasons. That's it.
Good.
The last one is, do we have an agreement to do the letters to the city?
Yes.
We can't hear you, Mayor Davey.
The city of Miami and the mayor of Miami-Dade County, as Councilmember Laredo recommended.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, authorizing the mayor to write a letter on our behalf.
Appreciate it. All right, I'll get them done. I'll let you all take a look. All right, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Let's go. Have a great night.
Wait. There is another comment I want to ask since it has not come up. I think it should be put on the record so that the island and the watchers know about the hearing today. There's no report from the village attorney. Basically, just for the record, today was the hearing on the village's motion to dismiss the complaint for the bond. The court denied the motion to dismiss and the litigation continues. Just want to put that on the record so everyone knows.
We'll get a summary judgment soon enough. Thanks.
Okay, good night.
Thank you.